My name's Jeff, and I'm the senior minister here, and we're going through a series of sermons called the Minor League, and it's about the minor prophets. That name for those last 12 books in the Old Testament has been there since at least St. Augustine in the 300s. He called it the minor prophets, and it's kind of in contrast to the other guys, to Isaiah, who had a much bigger book, and Jeremiah had a much bigger book, and Daniel and Ezekiel, and so it's kind of in contrast to those. And it's all a bunch of guys who wrote during the last couple hundred years of Israel and Judah's existence before they were overrun by the Assyrians and by the Babylonians. And there's lots of relatively well-known passages in Micah. You might not think that you know Micah very well, but there are some passages that are somewhat well-known. One of them is this, in Micah chapter 4:3. It says, "They'll beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, and nation will not take up sword against nation. They won't train for war anymore." These words here, almost exactly, word for word in Isaiah chapter 2. It's carved into the outside of the United Nations headquarters building in New York. It's kind of a famous verse, and it's a picture of what's going to be like one day. God's going to come in and fix things, and we look forward to that. In Micah chapter 5, there's this verse where he says, "But you, Bethlehem Ephratah, though you're small amongst the clans of Judah, out of you will one day come for me one who will be a ruler over Israel, whose origins are from ancient days." And so we look at that as a prophecy about Jesus. And again, it's that prediction of times to come and how finally one day God is going to make it right. God's going to make things better. And then there's this verse. This might be the most famous verse in Micah. It says, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, to act justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with God." And this verse, and certainly the kind of the theme of this verse, the idea of this verse, is mostly what Micah hits on. It's mostly what Micah is about. He's challenging the people of Israel to start thinking bigger than themselves, and to start thinking about people who might not have as much as they do. Micah's writing especially, I guess, to the landowners and to the elite, but he's also got a heart for the small villages and for the people who don't have as much, for the people who are just struggling to survive. And Micah's challenge is that picture of what's going to come one day when swords are beaten into plowshares, when there's no more fighting. We have an obligation to strive for that now. We know God will one day say enough's enough and make it right, but we have an obligation to push for that reality now. And the way that we push for that is that we make sure that we act justly, and we make sure that we do the things we're supposed to do. And as we do that, then God's going to take our small efforts and do some big things with it. And that's what Micah's about, and I wanted to talk about that today. Micah kind of kicks off in chapter 3, and he says, "But me," he says, I'm filled with power, filled with the Spirit of the Lord, with justice and might, to declare to Jacob his transgression and to Israel his sin." So Micah says about himself, God is all over me. God's Spirit is all over me, and I'm just filled with that power. And not just that, but he describes it as justice and might, that God is putting some kind of a new vision in my heart and a new passion in me, and I'm so overwhelmed by it that I have to speak out. I have to say what's going on. I have to share it. I have to tell somebody. Now we, in the New Testament era, after Jesus, we're also to be filled up with God's Spirit. And so at some level, what he's going through here should be descriptive of us. It's not always, but it should be. And that God has put his Spirit on us in the hopes that we will take what he's given us and push, try to make some difference in this old world. Now that word, I highlighted justice there. That word that he uses is a Hebrew word, mishpat, and it means justice and fairness and equity. Now I know equity has kind of become a loaded political word, and if you lean a little harder to the conservative side of it, you might not like that word because Kamala used it in a speech once, and she meant something by it, and you're not sure you agree with all those things. But he's not talking so much about tax policy, and he's not really talking so much about forcing people to do it. He's talking about a heart change. And that when you, who are kind of on the top, see someone who's beneath you, or see somebody who's been knocked down by life, or see somebody who has it harder, you do what you can to lift them up. That word justice, that word mishpat, can mean it can mean punishment. It can mean that. If I steal your car, then I go to jail. It can mean that. It does mean that sometimes. But it more often means I do what I can to help you out. I do what I can to even the scales, you know. Right now I have a lot and you don't have very much, but I'm trying to even it out to where we both have enough to get by and we both have enough to make it. And that's what Micah says that he's all ate up with. And so I want to talk about that just for a second, just so we're all understanding that phrase and that language about justice. And really how it's an obligation for all of us to care about that just a little bit. If you, I was watching a Bible Project video this week, and it was talking about some different animals. The praying mantis. The praying mantis, when she no longer needs him around, she'll kill him and eat him. And praying mantises do that. People shouldn't do that. If people shouldn't do that, that's bad if people do it. But praying mantis can. We don't think anything about it if praying mantises do that. You know, it's one of those things they do. Crazy mantises. There's another group of sea lions. Sea lions will. The males are all turf oriented. They're trying to get as much turf as they can, as much area as they can. It's not unusual for a male sea lion, which is a really big, heavy animal, to run over and crush his own offspring so he can attack another lion who's getting into territory that he wants. And again, the sea lions get away with that. You know, we look at sea lions and think, wow, that's wild that they do that. But people, if there was a man who was so intent on building his empire, his business or whatever, that he ran over his own kids, we'd look down on somebody like that. We would say, oh, no, that's a terrible thing. You can't do that. There's a bird called the pied hornbill, and the male of that will get a female, and they'll build a nest together, carve out some part of a tree, and he'll put her in the tree and then cover it with mud, where it's just a very little hole where he can feed her, and then she has to be in there and raise the kids and take care of it until he decides when she can come out. And if a man, you know, pied hornbill get with that, but if a man tried to control a woman that way, it'd be illegal, right? It'd be wrong. Well, we just know that that's wrong. Intuitively feel that that's wrong. A panda could have twins. But throw one away. In fact, they usually do that. If a panda has twins, they'll usually dump one of them and keep the other. And we understand that for pandas, you know. But if a person did that. And what I guess I'm saying with all that is animals are allowed to act according to their instinct. But when people act according to their instinct, we intuitively know that there are certain standards that we ought to live up to, you know. Because we're not praying mantises. And we're not some sea lion or a bird or we're not animals. I mean, there's a part of us that's animal-like, I guess, but we're not animals. And there's something different about us. And we all know it. Even if we're not religious, we know it. That there's something different, there's something unique about people. We're not allowed just to go to our instinct. Now, the Bible, when it talks about that, says that the difference is that we were made in the image of God, that God made us, man and woman, in his image. And it doesn't mean, when it says that we have a face like God has a face, but it means that we're creative like he's creative. We have a capacity to imagine like he does, and we have a capacity to dream like he does. We have an ability to choose a better future like he does. We can go beyond our instinct and live to something higher like God does. Animals don't do that, but we can do that. And while, again, there's a part of us that's very much like an animal, when a person debases themselves and lives like an animal, we look down on that. We intuitively know that's wrong, that we're called to something higher. And again, even if you're not religious and if you don't believe in we're made in the image of God, you know that that's true, that there's something about us that's bigger than that. And so, right after the fall, right, at the Garden of Eden, man and woman are even. But as soon as the fall happens, and she's kind of beneath him, there's kind of a division there between the man and the woman, and she's kind of beneath him. And it starts something that you start to see spread out. And as the people move around the world, as different nations and races and everything starts to develop, we start to see this push that some people are higher and other people are lower. And sometimes it's based on how they look or how they think, how they talk. Sometimes it's based on their wealth. Often it's based on their wealth. But whatever it is, we start to rank people. And some guys get to go first in line, and other guys get to go last. And it's very instinctive to do that. But we're not supposed to live to instinct. We're called to something higher. The nation of Israel, ironically, was a nation of slaves. And God freed them and said, we're going to make something brand new. But as soon as Israel got money, they took slaves of their own. And a lot of people who don't like the system, what they don't like is that they're at the bottom of the system. If they were at the top of the system, they'd be okay with it again. What God seems to be after is a complete dismantling of the system. That there's a new kingdom coming, where swords will be beaten into plowshares, and we'll think differently about one another, think differently about the people beneath us than we do now. That we'll strive for ways to lift them up and to make them better, to make them who maybe God has in mind and what God wants to be. We're going to restore people to be their best. Okay, that's mishpat, means justice. It's a big theme in Micah. Probably the most, I told you that verse earlier, act justly, love mercy, walk humbly. I want to talk about that for a little bit, but I want to develop it just a little. In Micah chapter 6, God starts by saying, I want to plead my case. And he's using it like it's a court language. Like God has walked into a courtroom, and he says, stand up and plead my case before the mountains. So let the hills hear what you have to say. He says, hear you mountains, the Lord's accusation. Listen, you everlasting foundations of the earth. So like God in heaven is declaring, he wants the land that we're walking on to testify against us. The land that we're walking on, you see how they act. You see what they do. God is bringing his case, and the very world we live on is the jury, and they're going to decide whether we're right or wrong. And here's his deal. My people, what have I done to you? Have I burdened you? And at first, it doesn't seem like much of an accusation, right? I mean, is this what you're mad about, God? But you got to kind of see what he's saying there. It's like somehow, some way, following me has become like this terrible burden for you to carry. To come and follow me has suddenly become so hard and so difficult, and I hear your whining, and I see how you complain about it, and I see your grumbling, and what have I done to make your lives so hard? And he's talking about religion. People, I don't want to read my scripture. I don't want to pray. I don't want to go to church. I don't want to serve. I don't want to give. I don't want to do any of these things. You keep asking me, God, for more things to do, and I don't want to do them, and it's that kind of stuff. And again, we know what that's like because it's easy to do that. I mean, it's easy to grumble and feel like it's too demanding, it's too hard. And that's God says, I have a, and so imagine like a court, right? And God is pleading his case, and he's saying, I'm clearly right, and the people are clearly wrong. Well, the people respond. In chapter 6, it says, and here's their response. He says, with what shall we come before the Lord and bow down? Should we bring burnt offerings? Calves a year old? And then they start exaggerating. Would God be pleased with 1,000 rams? Or 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Should I offer the firstborn of my transgression, the fruit of my body, for the sin of my soul? And what the people are saying is, God, you always want so much more. I give you a few dollars and you want more dollars. Or I give you a few hours and you want more hours. And it's like I can't ever make you happy. And you think about a person in a hard marriage. You know, a husband or wife who's saying that to their spouse. I can't ever make you happy. You always want more. You always want something different. You always, and it just feels like it's such a struggle just to get through the day. And God says that's how they talk to me. The people respond. God says, what have I done to make you so frustrated? And the people answer, well, it's like you want more, God. And again, the answer is, it's like you want more religion, God. You know, we make one offering and you want another one. And you want a better one. And so God responds to that with the verse that we talked about earlier. And so that's not really what I'm after at all. That's not really what I want. Let me pause here and just as a quick aside, say that all the things we do that are kind of religious things, they aren't bad. You know, we sing songs, and I like when we sing songs. I do. I like singing the songs when Lexi or Toby lead, and honestly, I like leading the songs. I like helping with that. I had somebody tell me the other day that when I led, I had a beautiful voice, and I said, "Thank you, Mom. That was nice," and it's good to hear, you know. But I like that. I like to read my Bible. I do. I like to figure things out. I like it when I figure something out and I tell you about it and you say how smart I am for figuring that out. That feels good. I'm not a great prayer. I'm not great at it. But I find that when I pray, I feel closer to God. And it helps me. You know, I like attending church. I would attend church even if you didn't pay me to. I would. I'd come. I'd be here. My attendance record wouldn't be that much worse, to be honest, if I wasn't paid. I get it. It makes sense to me, and I'm comfortable in it, and it works for me. And it helps. And I can point to when I'm really, like what Mark said with small groups, so I'm really engaged in my small group, I feel closer to God. I feel closer to the church. It helps. You know, all those things are good things. None of those things are bad things. But none of those things are what God talks about on the slide behind me. You know, if all those sacrifices seem too hard, God says, I'm not after church attendance. That's not my main goal. That when you get to heaven, you say, I read the Bible 20 times. And the guy behind you, I read it 22 times. And the guy behind him's only read it 15, and he feels like, oh, man, I'm in trouble. And that's not what I'm after. I want your heart. And all the other stuff that we do, all those religious things are designed to try to steer your heart back to Him, but it's all about the heart. I want your heart. I want you to see the world like I see the world, God says. I want you to engage with the world, engage with people like I engage with them. And that's what all this stuff's about. I want you to act just. And remember, it's mishpat. I want you to strive for fairness. And the way you do that is when you see somebody who's beneath you, maybe they're not as strong as you or as smart as you or as talented as you or as wealthy as you lift them up. And it can be something pretty subtle. You know, somebody who's maybe not as popular. They don't run quite in the same circles that you run in, and you invite them into your circle. That's what Jesus talked about. When you give a party, don't just invite the rich and the good-looking. Invite some people who can't pay you back. And that's what he means. It's the same thing Micah says. That you see some of the guys who are lower than you, and you bring them up. It might mean that you be kind to somebody who's not always kind to you. You know, what's the cliche? That hurt people hurt other people. And so you've been hurt by somebody 2 or 3 times, and okay, enough's enough. But when you act justly, you realize they're doing that because they're hurt, and you look beyond their pain, and you still help them. You still lift them up. Sometimes it is financial. Sometimes it's going to, actually I should mention, anytime you really love somebody, it's going to cost. It's going to cost you energy, it's going to cost you time, it's going to cost you money. You can't love somebody without spending of yourself. And so you start to see the world different. If you're a businessman or a businesswoman, you're trying to build something. You know, normally in the world, business is business. And you know, you're allowed to be kind of cutthroat in business because business is business. But if you're a Christian and you act justly, you might cut somebody a deal because you know they need it. There might be somebody in your employ that you honestly want to fire sometimes, but you're patient with them because you know how desperately they need the job. And you keep trying to bring them along, even though it's hard. There might be some times when you give away stuff for free to somebody who you know can't afford it. And do you do that all the time? No, you couldn't be in business if you did it all the time. But I mean, you're looking for ways to use what God has blessed you with to lift other people up. You act justly. You try to find ways to even the scales just a little bit. And if you have a lot in anything, then you share some. You try to show some compassion. But it's not just acting justly, it's loving mercy. And I should have highlighted the word love there too, because you need to want to do it. I'm hungry to do it. I enjoy doing it. I think I mentioned this before several weeks ago, but there's a ministry called Kairos. It's a prison ministry. And at different times in our church's life, since I've been here, we've been very active in it. And early, when I first got here, there were 5 or 6 guys who went every time to the prison up in Putnamville and served. And they were trying to get me to go one weekend. And it's a pretty big commitment. I missed the whole Sunday there too, but it's just you're locked in prison with all these guys for a whole weekend. And when I finally agreed to do it, I looked around the room, and I was at least 15 years younger than the next guy in there. And I thought to myself, you know, if something goes down, it's going to be me that's going to have to try to do it. And I knew how I am. There's no way. We're in trouble. And I remember thinking that, right? But when I was still debating whether to do it or not, whether I was going to get in there and serve in this ministry, there was one guy who attended the church, and he was real active in it. He said, man, you need to do it. It's the best. It's like crack, which is a weird thing to say to a minister. It's a weird thing to toss out there as a hook, you know, to get you in there. It's like crack. But I guess it was effective because I signed up for it, and I can't tell you for sure whether or not it was like crack. I don't know. I don't have the other side of that to compare it to, but it was really good. It was. There was something so powerful about it, and I find that to be true. I find that when I am generous, it helps me too. I'm blessed in it. It's not uncommon to hear a teacher in the Sunday school say about the kids, I got more out of it than they did. It's also not uncommon to say, man, I need to go home and take a nap. And that happens too. But it's not uncommon to hear somebody say, it really blessed me today. It's not uncommon to hear somebody go on the bed ministry delivery and deliver some beds to families that don't have the beds and come back and say, you know, that blessed me more than it blessed them. That really affected me. I've never regretted being generous. Now, there have been times when I feel like I've gotten taken advantage of. That never feels good. Been some times when I felt like I got lied to. That never feels good either. But the act of being generous, I've never regretted that. I always feel like God will use what He'll use it, you know. I did the right thing, and it affected me whether it affects them or not. It blessed me. I find that when I'm generous, when I do what I'm supposed to do, it changes me whether or not it changes the other person. There's an author, Brant Hansen, and he talks about going on a missionary trip to, I think it was Senegal in Africa. And it's right there near the equator. It was just blistering hot. And there was me and 2 other Americans, and it was just crazy. And the air conditioning wasn't keeping up in the car, and it's just super thick traffic. And we're at a stop intersection, and there's a lady there. And she's got a blue dress on. I remember the blue dress. She's taller than most of the other women. And she's really gesturing to us, trying to get us to see her. She's trying to sell peanuts to us. And she's just so desperate to get our attention. And I and the other guys in the back seat, we tried to pretend like we were looking at anything else but her as she's really gesturing at us. And then we leave. We go through the intersection. And it just kind of stuck with me, this picture. So he said, Brant Hansen said, I turned around and looked back in the window, and she's running on the sidewalk. It's 105, 110 degrees. They're right on the equator. And she's running on the sidewalk trying to get to the next intersection so she can try to signal to us again. And he said, it occurs to me what's going on, that she sees that we're foreigners, and she assumes that we probably have some money, and she's desperate to sell these peanuts. I mean, his whole family depends on this income. Whatever she makes today, that's what they're going to eat, or they'll be eating those peanuts. And so he said, I had the guy pull over to the side, and she catches up with us, and I said, I'll take some peanuts, or $1. And so I gave her $1. I asked my friends if they wanted any. No, we're not hungry. So I gave her $1, and she was so thankful, and she left. And he said, when I think back about that, I kick myself, because I could have given her $50. And I wouldn't have missed it. I would have had plenty of money to do the rest of the stuff that I wanted. But that could have changed her whole week. I could have changed her whole month. But, I'm always thinking about a good deal. People are asking me for money. I'm a little thrifty. And I think it's a good strategy. Like with a telemarketer on the phone, or if a salesman comes to your door trying to sell something, I can see why you might want to be a little suspicious there. I get that. It's hard to make money. But when we could take our money or our time or our energy and really transform somebody. I talk to the guys in this bed ministry, and they'll talk about how sometimes they'll leave the bed there. And I remember one thing in particular. We delivered some beds, I think it was down near Tunnelton, and I was hearing from the guys who delivered it afterward, and they said they got a text from the people they just delivered it to, and they said the kid is on the bed, and he's got all his toys on the bed. It's like his little island there in the house. And I know that a gift like that doesn't permanently change anything. I get that. But I mean, you've not just transformed that kid's day, you might have transformed their whole month. And even when they're older, years and years down the road, when they think about how some church cared about them enough to do that, will that matter? It might not, but it could, and mercy changes people. And God says, I want you to love to do that. And it goes hand in hand with that walking justly. I want you to love to do that sort of thing. Food for thought here. The golden rule. If I ask you to say it with me, and I'll get you started, I'll go with you, but you say it with me if you can. Do unto, now everybody, stay with all of you, okay? If somebody's not doing it, all right, say it with me here. Do unto others. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You all know that, right? I helped you a little bit with it, but if I hadn't, you'd have got it. Now, what's weird to me about that, though, is when I think about that verse, I usually frame it in the negative in my head. Don't do to somebody what you don't want them to do, right? If I'm training my kids, hey, don't take that kid's toy. You wouldn't like it if they took your toy. Don't smack that kid. You wouldn't like it if they smacked you. And in my own life, I might do that. Don't blare your music loud at night when the neighbor's trying to sleep, because you wouldn't like it if they did that. And it kind of governs me. Don't do something that you wouldn't want somebody to do back. That's an easy rule to think. But that's not really what he says. He says, do unto others what you want them to do. And that's crazy harder. Think about somebody you've got conflict with, you've got beef with, somebody that you're having some trouble with. What would you like them to do for you? Well, I'd like them to come and make it right. I'd like them to treat me right again. I'd like them to be different. Okay, well, you do that then. In a marriage, husband and wife are both mad at each other, and one's taking away this thing, and the other's taking away this other thing, and the tit for tat there is they're trying to punish the other one. Well, what do you want them to do for you? Well, I wish they would love me, serve. I wish they would really go all the way, and I would know that I mattered. Well, then you do that. Well, what if I do it and they don't do it back? Well, they might not. They might not. Well, I didn't start this thing. Well, it doesn't matter. What do you want them to do for you? Well, then you go do that. That's love and mercy, right? And it's much harder than just not doing bad stuff. It requires a little more thinking than that. And then the last thing, again, is you just walk humbly with God. You realize it's not you, it's all him. It's his grace, it's his compassion, it's his kindness. If you are a little stronger, a little smarter, a little richer, it's only because he's been good to you. If you do have a few advantages in this life, it's only because God is compassionate. You know, the old cliche, there but for the grace of God, go I. Man, that's just so true. And any number of different things could have derailed you, but they didn't. And some of that's due to your good thinking, but so much of it's due to the grace of God, it's hard to even figure out where you start. So you walk humbly. You stay humble about it. And you use whatever gifts you have, whatever talents you have, whatever blessings you have to bless others. Jesus tells a story that's kind of similar to this. It hits on some of the same themes. He says there was a rich man who went out of town. And while he was gone, he asked 3 guys to watch his stuff. He gave one guy 5 units, and another guy 2 units, and a third guy 1, and said, take this stuff of mine and do good stuff with it. And they left. And the guy who got 5 talents, he used it. And at the end, he had 10. He doubled his investment. And the master says, well done, good and faithful servant. Come on into the master's happiness and receive your reward. And the second guy, he'd done the same thing. He'd invested his stuff. He'd been given by God, and he used it. He gave it back, and God blessed. And so same thing. Well done, good and faithful servant. Come on in. You know, you've more than done what you're supposed to do. But the third guy, he says, I was scared. I was scared I'd lose what I have. I was scared because I know what kind of guy you are. You're always demanding more. It's really similar to the Micah language. You want even more offering and even more. You just keep asking for more. You don't care about me. You just want me to tie me in knots. And so I took what you gave me and I buried it in the ground. And here it is. I'll give it all back to you. I didn't keep any of it. It's all yours. Here, you take it back. And the master, in both the Matthew version of that and the Luke version, will say, you weren't scared. You were wicked and lazy. You knew exactly what you were supposed to do. You just didn't do it. And he's hitting on all the same drum beats that this Micah passage is. You've been given one life, so much talent and gift and potential. You need to use it. And the main way you use it is to lift people up. I find that when I see somebody struggling or having a hard time, and it's more than I want to bite off, or if I don't think I can see an easy way to make a difference, I pray about it. And that's a good thing. But what I do is I pray that God will take care of it. God, I just ask you to take care of that, whatever that is. And then when I walk away, I feel pretty good about it again. Because I feel like if God wants it taken care of, he'll take care of it. And it's weird because I don't ever do that about other things. Like if I decide I'm going to go into town and I'm going to meet somebody for lunch, and I go hop in the truck, I don't say, God, if you want me to go to town, make the truck start, right? And if it don't start, I don't say, well, I guess you don't want me to go to town because the truck didn't start. Because I have keys. My wrist works. I can turn on the truck myself. If I want to go to a ball game, or if I want to go to a concert, or if I want to go see somebody, I don't say, God, if you want me to get there, you'll just make it happen. Because I've got a key and my hand works. I can turn it on. I only do that for things outside of me and outside of what I want. And love's always expensive. It always asks a lot. And what I want you to consider, this is my last thought here. I want you to consider that your life matters. Your life matters. And if you don't do it, it might not happen. That maybe when God said we need to do something about that, he gave you eyes to see it. He gave you ears to hear about it. And there was somebody without food and they needed food, or without drink and they needed drink. There was somebody who needed a visit or needed somebody to show some care for them, to give them clothes or attention or compassion. And he gave you the vision for it. You saw it. And it was awesome that you prayed about it like you did, but you were the answer. And when I think about that my life matters, that I'm not just some bug or sea lion or panda, and I'm not an animal, that I'm here and made in the image of God, that God has put me here to do something about it. And he's put you here to do something about it. That your life, your time, that it matters. And maybe the only reason why you've got some money in your pocket or some time on your hands is because you were the one who could have done something. And if you don't do it, it won't happen. And as I think about that, I know that has to be true. I mean, I know that has to be true. So what I want to do here at the end of our service here together is we'll still have some guys in front to pray with you if you'll make a decision. We do that every week, and they'll be here, and if you want to pray about anything, people in front who will pray with you about whatever you want to pray about. But I also want to pray about, is there something you're supposed to be doing? And just, I'll pray, and you pray with me, and if something comes in your head, then pray hard about it. And let's ask God to use us if there's stuff we're supposed to be on top of, okay? Let me pray with you.